joining us on this live. Today we have Chris with us from Hexamatic. You already know the deal which is going around, and also the software product has been really popular. And for some weird reason, I didn't bring him on a live before that. I thought I'm missing a lot of thing I wanted to ask him personally because I do have some questions, and also I see the platform has come a long way from the moment I created my review video for this product. So I thought, why not bring Chris? And I also saw some community members still have a lot of doubts or just have a bit more clarification on certain features and function. So I thought give an option for you guys to ask any questions you want directly with him. You can mention everything on chat. We will go through the chat questions and just to explore all the possibilities with Exomatic to see whether this is a good product for you or not. Okay, Chris, thank you so much for joining us and just introduce yourself.
Hi, so thank you for the warm intro. So I'm Chris, I'm one of the co-founders of Hexact. We have created 3 different platforms. We've got Hexometer, Hexawatch, and now Hexamatic. So Hexamatic is if you have a look at the website, it's a no-code work automation platform. So essentially what we're trying to create is an end-to-end platform that enables you to capture data from the internet and then perform automated tasks on that data from the cloud. So the idea is that as a marketer or a salesperson or a researcher, there's like tons of manual tasks that you do on a day-to-day basis. You know, whether you're looking for prospects, whether you're trying to enrich this data, find contact details, whether you're running different types of audits, you're checking your tech stack, trying to find an icebreaker when you're getting in touch with people, or you know, if you're in a marketing team and you're doing SEO or you're doing some form of, say, web development, and you want to make sure that pages are rendering correctly, or you want to check like meta tags, you want to run different types of audits. The idea is that there are loads of tasks that you tend to do on a manual basis which are time consuming. So the core idea with Hexamatic is the internet is like a gold mine of info. You can use it to find prospects. You can use it to find potential leads. You can use it to get different types of products that you could be selling. You can capture like product catalogs, etc. You also have loads of cloud services, you know, things like Google AI that enables you to, label images, perform translations. You can get a wide range of different services that are usually disconnected. So our idea is, okay, you can capture data from any website. You can run tasks using third-party services. And then you can perform work tasks on that data and then have a final output. And all this happens in one workflow. So one example I was sharing with a friend the other day was like, say you're in the SEO field and you want to do SEO outreach. Normally you would go on Google, you'd be like, okay, I'm looking at my competitor. You go to like a SEO tool, get all the backlinks of these competitors. Then for every backlink, you have to look for contact details to get in touch with that site and say, oh, I have, you haven't mentioned my site, but you mentioned my competitor's site, or, I have a better article that could also be linked to this kind of stuff. Now, this would take like a few steps. With Hexamatic, what you can do is say, okay, give me the top 10 ranking websites for this keyword. And for each website, find me all the backlinks that link to each. And then for each backlink, find me the contact details that I can send to my VA or to my team to get in touch with. And essentially, you can run this in one click. And you just get like a CSV or a Google Sheet with all that data. So there are lots of opportunities, I think, like that. And with Hexamatic, we're trying to find a way of, okay, let's put everything, let's create like a blank canvas and say, okay, this data source, this type of service, and plug everything in, and you become like a scientist. You become like an inventor. You're saying, okay, I'm taking this, I'm adding that, and I'm getting this output. And it all happens in the cloud. You don't have to leave your computer on. and then you just pick up the file and you pass it to your VA or you use it, and you're saving a ton of time. So that's essentially the concept of Hexamatic in a sort of lengthy nutshell.
No, you explained perfectly because when I initially started testing out Hexamatic, it was a pre-beta, if I would say that it had a limited number of automations or different types of services. But I was checking Hexamatic like a couple of days ago and I found a lot more features. Like one of the use cases which you just mentioned now, I believe there is something called templates right now, which you guys have already built in different tasks. So it's just mere usage of just picking something and start using it. I saw a template for something like broken link SEO campaign and everything. So you are trying to make it easy, but in case if user wants to do some kind of his own automation process or something like that, that is also still possible. And I believe we can build templates like that for our personal use as well, right?
Yeah, so it's essentially the problem of Zapier. Now, I love Zapier, but Zapier is a pretty big beast to make the most of, because Zapier enables you, for example, to connect to loads of different apps as a data connector. But in order to do it, you need to have some technical knowledge, you need to play with APIs, and you need to sort of integrate things together. And what we found was with Hexamatic, we had a similar problem. We provided a blank canvas for people to use. And so, they can create their own scraping recipes, they can use different automations, they can create their own workflows. But what we were missing was a way of saying, okay, if you want to do this particular use case, run that. So what we created was a workflow library. And as you say, so you can pick from different use cases or scenarios. So for example, get me the backlinks of competing websites for like the top 10 of Google, or run me a website audit that goes through all the links, all the pages of a website via our crawler, looks for broken pages, gets the SEO meta tags, does a word count, maybe runs a spelling or grammar audit, or capture me like the screenshots of all the pages in a mobile format, for example. So you can essentially, so this is our workflow library. So essentially, these are ready-made workflows that our team has put together. And in order to make use of it, you simply click it, put in your, your starting point. So for example, in this case, you put like a URL, and then Hexamatic does the rest. So we're trying to abstract away the complexity of doing certain tasks. And these are the type of use cases that our users have been asking for and that we've been trying to make tutorials for. But we thought, what's better than a tutorial? Actually having something that is ready to run. So in this case, it's a lot easier to say, okay, yeah, you want to do a tech stack analysis on all the pages of your, for example, competing websites for a specific industry. Sure. So run the Google search plus tech stack analysis, and you've got it. So so this is the idea.
Yep. I just wanted to show this because I found this really interesting, because last time when I checked, it wasn't there, but I see that it shows like what are the automation it's using on this side, and it's pre-built in. For example, if I want to find SEO backlink partner, then it shows like what are the flows within that, like performing a Google search, we are automatically giving it, it shows the results, then takes another step like scraping emails for that URL, then another step of email address validation and a social link scrape. So that's something I just wanted to show. So users who are not using Hexomatic can see that. But just for clarification, but these different modules will be combined both with premium and as well as a normal automations, right?
Yeah, so we have two types of automations. We have 40 built-in automations, which use the standard credits that you get in the plan. And we have premium automations, which use either third-party services or which are managed by the team. So what we've tried to do is the workflow library tends to use the built-in automations, but there's also some which use the premium ones. So the idea with sort of premium and normal automations is simply that there are certain things that use third parties. So for example, Google AI services like transcription, OCR, text-to-speech, image labeling, image safety detection. These types of things use sort of third-party services that are built into Hexamatic. So what we've tried to do is we create the platform that enables you to plug in all these different things. And we also provide like an Amazon Prime type additional subscription where for pennies on the dollar, you can get access to these wide range of different services. So when you're, for example, scraping websites, you tend to, if the website has advanced countermeasures, you typically need to use a residential proxy. Problem is, these are quite expensive. I mean, they range between $60 and $300 a month. The average user who wants to just, scrape, one website today in a project, they're not going to want to subscribe to $300 worth of residential proxies just to do this one thing. So we thought, okay, why don't we create something where you can use, for example, residential proxies on a per-use basis. And because we're using like premium credits, we can make it start at like $4.99. So for $4.99, you get to use this super expensive service on a usage basis. So you do one project, that's fine. That costs you maybe $2. So same with the other services. Like for example, you could subscribe for $30 a month for DeepL translations. Or you could spend a few cents using our automation based on the amount of words you want to translate. So we try to do that with third-party services. So right now we have access to AI services. So for example, Google has some awesome tech with regards to AI. We're talking about like being able to recognize what images contain, being able to recognize whether an image is violent or contains profanity or is not applicable to minors. So if you're like in an industry where you need to check like images which are provided by the community, or you want to do an analysis of, for example, a website and check to see if images are compliant, you could use that, for example, and save a ton of time. And there's no need to play around with APIs or programming and that kind of stuff. In terms of the other premium automations, we're talking about things like, say there's a Google automation. So instead of, you can create your own Google scraping recipe, or we have one which our team manages. So whenever there's a change in Google search result listings or in Google Maps, it's all taken care of. So you don't have to worry about it. And it only costs like a few cents per search. So it's again, super cheap.
And
the
if
idea where we're coming from.
sorry to disturb, just for users, like all these are available within the website itself. You don't need to go inside the app. For example, I'm in Hexomatic. When I go into the automations, that is where I am right now, and I can see all the different types of automation, and just it shows premium automation. When I click on something, then it shows the cost of one particular credit. Like, so for different templates, it's a different cost. Just wanted to highlight that so users can get an idea. For example, you can see the price depending on the type of automation or the complexity. I think price differs for each one of it.
That's right. So yeah, we have 40 built-in automations that just are included in your in all the plans, and they use sort of our automation credits. So the silver plan has 4,500 automation credits, which you can use like for scraping and automations, and the gold one has like 10,000. These go a long way. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with that. Same thing with.
We got one question on that. I think it's a bit relevant for this use case which you are discussing. Yeah. Like the users are Larry is asking like, what are the special prices for premium automation, and is there any discount for early adopters while subscribing this add-on? I saw this question a couple of times in the community as well, where users asking, is it there kind of a discount for early adopters? And also the rate card. I think rate card is the one which I explained right now, where you can see the cost for each of this task within the automation description itself. But can you share some insights on the discount part?
Sure. So we don't have special prices for premium automations. They're the same for all users. So whether you subscribe monthly or you have an LTD plan, you both have the same price list. The idea is that our LTD users, our early adopters, they're getting exactly the same plan as monthly, yearly subscribers. There's absolutely no difference here. What we do have is when you subscribe to premium credits, they start like at really low price, like $4.99 for like 50 premium credits. And then if you go for, I think, 100 or 150 premium credits a month, then there's like a discount. So you get like a 5% more and 10% more, I think. The higher your subscription for premium credits.
Is there a time expiration for this credits?
So these, so the premium credit add-on is monthly, and it gives you an allowance. So you get for $4.99, you get an allowance of 50 premium credits that you can use within that month. They don't roll over, and they if you don't use them on this month, then they don't carry on to the next month.
So it don't get rollover, right?
No, because these are essentially for using third-party services. A lot of them are also on subscriptions, so it's kind of it wouldn't make sense from a financial perspective to be able to do that. But again, we try to make it as cost efficient as possible for the end users. So you're getting a huge amount of value. Like if you compare, for example, with residential proxies, the example I gave before, these are typically like $60 to $300 a month. DeepL is like $30 a month. You have, for example, SEO backlink data. If you were to use like Majestic or Moz or whatever, these are like $50 to $100 a month just for the backlink data. Here, for like $4.99, you can basically access a la carte what you need, and these go a long way. If you look at the cost in premium credits, we're talking about like a few cents per task in many cases, or a few cents per X characters. So we try to make it as affordable as possible, whilst covering our costs and maintenance and all that kind of stuff.
So premium automation is anything with a third-party access or third-party data, or requires some kind of proxies. That's what premium automations are, right?
Essentially. So it's either something which uses a third party, or it's something that uses a combination of proxies and our team managing it. So for example, Google Maps, these require both a proxy and the team just checking that it works. The idea is you have to manage your own scraping recipe that might change tomorrow or the day after. As an end user, you just want to get the data as a service. A lot of folks, they don't want to mess about with that, especially as it's so cheap. I mean, we're talking about a few cents per search that gives you like 100 results.
For example, I think Google Maps is like 0.04 cents, which gets you 100 different search results for Google Maps.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Now the main thing I wanted to ask you, which I found interesting, was the crowd-funded automation. What is that is about?
Right. So this is pretty unique. So there are situations where you can't scrape via a machine. There might be some technical limitations, or there are things that only a human can basically do. So for example, you want to do some research on, say, SEO agencies. You might have a list of, you might use Google and say, okay, SEO agency in LA. and that'll give you a set of search results. But how do you know if they're a purebred SEO agency, or are they a digital marketing agency, or are they something else? Or is this a blog post about SEO agencies? What you can do is you can tap into our team and to basically do the reconnaissance for you. So with our crowdsourced automations, what we've done is you can essentially tap into a human person to either do the scraping part or to assess whatever that page is. Essentially, it's like having a VA that works on a task basis within an existing workflow.
Interesting, but still I'm not able to fully understand it. So, like, if we create a automation within our campaign, how does this kind of automation comes into play into that?
Right. So it's a bit like having a VA. For example, the human-powered data collection, you can essentially say this. Okay, if I provide this list of websites, find me the names of the founders.
Okay, so the actual person will go out and look for it. A
Yes.
person VA.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
It's like Mechanical Turk in that you have a box with someone inside that does the work for you, right?
So what kind of time frame? Like, is it instant or it takes time?
Well, it's not instant because there's a human involved, but
Yeah.
what we're doing is we first created it using some of our team members doing the work. And then the idea is that as it gets more volume, we will open a sort of marketplace so that folks who are looking to find like a work in sort of data research, they would be able to earn a living finding data for our users inside Hexamatic. So the idea is like, it's a bit like hiring someone, but without having contracts or having to, train them or do certain things. You simply put in a question and you get someone that gives you the answer, so to speak, but within a workflow. So the magic here is that you can combine, for example, something which goes through Google to do some analysis, and then for each result, you can tap into a human person to do like some work on each row of data.
Makes sense. So we have to give sort of like a request to them. There is no predefined request or something, but a custom message to them saying this is what they have to do.
Yeah, so we have, right now we have two types of crowdsourced automations. One is a yes-no qualification, so the one that you have now. So essentially, this enables you to qualify, for example, websites. You can say, oh, is this an agency, or is this a blog post? Is this a high-quality article, or is this, something which would save you time going through the data. The other one is a little bit more kind of extracting data. So, for example, you could say, find me the latest blog post from that website, even if there's no RSS feed, even if there's no sort of, because the idea is that there are loads of tasks that you can automate and scrape and do things programmatically. But there's still this gray area where sometimes you can't get the data from a machine straight away. So we're trying to fill that gray area that can happen in certain workflows.
So how does the credit consumption work for this kind of, like, if we are just buying LTD or just add-on, how much is it consumed? For example, I see two different types of credit. One, it shows one for credit and premium credit 5. Just can you explain that?
Sure. So every automation consumes one or more automation credits. So whether they're premium or whether they're standard automations, there's a running cost. And then premium automations have a premium credit cost per test. So in this case, you can get 10 human tasks for like $5.
Sorry, I missed that. Can you repeat it? Sorry about that.
Sure. So in this particular case, it would cost like one automation credit to run that particular task, and 5 premium credits. So for this type of task, it's about, if you have a premium credit subscription that gives you 50 premium credits, you can do 10 human tasks
Okay.
with your allocation, so to speak.
Okay, makes sense. So, does the complexity of the task will also range from user to user, right? So, there is a validation process going on for this, or is it just automatic?
So right now it's on a task basis, and we're still sort of tweaking it. I mean, these two crowdsourced automations are pretty new. So what
True.
we've done is we've priced it really low, so it's only like 50 cents per task, which is pretty scalable. And once we get a better idea of the type of tasks that people ask, then we might develop it into specific types of tasks, which might have a higher or lower price based on the amount of effort that's needed by the team.
So already have you got users using this particular feature?
Yeah, so we have some users using it. We're learning as we go through. So right now, the idea is to try and get as many users trying to take advantage of this, to understand the kind of things they ask for, so that we can both either create automations which can do that, or create specific crowdsourced automations that only do that particular task. So there's less gray areas to whether it would be contained within that task.
Makes sense. So just can you give some example use cases of this currently being using? No worries.
Right. So a use case is essentially when you're looking for prospects online, as an example. You usually have to go through each prospect to sort of qualify them. Is this relevant to my client? Is this relevant to my business? Is it worth doing an outreach? Is it worth spending more time with this? Or, for example, if you're doing product research, you may have a certain criteria for products that you're looking for. You know, is this product, I don't know, like over $100, or is this made of wood, or things which you can't know in advance and which could be difficult to get programmatically. So imagine you do a search on Google for blue widgets, and you go through each website and you're looking, okay, is this blue widget relevant to my client or to my business? So you can think, okay, are there qualification questions? Like, is this made of wood? Is it vegan? Is it organic? Is it, which would be very difficult to know beforehand. So the idea is this, it's to essentially provide a VA experience as inside a workflow in an automated process.
It's interesting, to be honest. Like I'm curious about the scalability of growing this particular function as the user who are start using this features more and more. And also, I think it's not just one feature set. It's going to be different for each single user, like the request, what they are doing. So that is where the challenge is going to be. I'm really excited to see this because I haven't seen this kind of features in other no code software. So I'm really excited to see how you guys can grow up this one.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying something new here, and we have this big vision for Hexamatic, in that we think we can become a end-to-end solution for like sales and marketing teams and research teams. And there's a lot of gaps right now, that areas where you spend a lot of time doing manual work. And the idea is to look at things slightly differently and say, instead of trying to create a product for, to capitalize on a certain market, let's reverse it and look at, okay, a typical agency or a typical web development shop, or someone, a consultant or an SEO specialist, what are they doing on a day-to-day basis? What are larger brands doing on a day-to-day basis that is time-consuming, where they need to have tons of staff and people doing repetitive jobs which are not necessarily suited to their potential. The idea is, okay, how can we create a new paradigm shift, so to speak, where we make it easy for businesses of all sizes, not just your enterprise level clients, but any type of business. How can they leverage automation? How can they basically tap into the cloud? And essentially, how can we even the playing field? A lot of large enterprise clients, they use Mechanical Turk to essentially outsource thinking and decision making on large data sets. How can we bring this to all businesses? This type of logic, and how can we bring it into a end-to-end system? I'm a big fan of companies like Tesla and Apple, who instead of relying on different suppliers and different parts and things, they try and build everything from the ground up. And so you have this complete package. You go into a Tesla car, the infotainment system was built from the ground up, by Tesla, and everything is interconnected. Everything just works out of the box. Same thing with Apple. You don't have incompatibility issues when you buy your MacBook Pro. It's all the chips are perfectly made for the system, and so you don't have any messing about. With Hexamatic, you want to take a similar approach where you can access different data from the web, so you can scrape different types of websites, bring that data in, and then you have built-in features which you can process the data with, and you can perform work tests. And it's all in one thing. You don't have to mess about with APIs. You don't have to mess about configuration issues. You don't have to worry about, oh, is this going to be compatible with that? No, you use a ready-made workflow. You put in your the data to start with, and then you get an output. And so the way we see it is that whether it's something which is crowdsourced or something which works like as an automation, how can we abstract it so that at the end of the day, for the user, what really matters is the input and the output. And how can we shorten the time and the effort between saying, oh, I want to do this particular use case, for example, finding backlinks for top performing websites, or running specific types of audits on pages, or finding prospects, and actually doing the work. Because a lot of products sound great, but you end up needing so many different other applications to do the work that you end up spending a ton of time just spinning your wheels. What you really want is true kind of compatibility and automation in the same platform, so that you can just put in something and get something out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense totally, because you are, as you mentioned, like even the add-ons where you are essentially restricting the work of going outside the application to do something. Instead, we have all the possible things inside the application, and if it's not possible to have it built in with the application, it requires some third-party data, and that goes into premium automation. And if it requires a human interaction, then it's going into the crowdsourced automation, right?
Yeah, and as we grow, I mean, you talked about the crowdsourced automations and whether they're scalable. Right now, the easiest way for us to figure out what types of tasks people need is to do it in-house. And then, once we get the volume, then we can create something like a marketplace where we can provide opportunities to folks around the world, who want to get work, and who can use their skills to their advantage and provide these services. I think that we have an opportunity to do more than just provide a service, but also to provide an environment, a community, a sort of marketplace. The same thing applies to automations and scraping recipes. Our end goal is, to be able to also have folks creating scraping recipes that can be shared, with the community or sold to the community, and to create, opportunities for others who have skills to essentially, make a living from this, and also to help others, achieve things using their skill set. Because, there's only so much you can do as a company, but, if you have thousands of super smart folks, creating new automations or new scraping recipes, you can imagine, the possibilities are potentially endless.
Yeah,
So,
especially true for something like this, where it's a no code based application and the use case is going to be customized for the users, right? So everyone will have a different sort of expertise, and if they can make a earning out of it, then that will make a sense. And marketplace does sound interesting, to be honest.
yeah, there's a lot of things we want to achieve, but we have to go, with baby steps. First, it's creating the platform, it's creating the scraping mechanism, it's creating the base automations, it's integrating with, best of breed third-party services. It's creating something which works out of the box, and then it's okay. How can we create tools that enable creators to do stuff? So right now we have like custom actions, and we have the ability to use CSS selectors and regex in scraping recipes. The next step is, okay, what more does a creator need to be able to do things like, scraping certain websites and providing this as a service? So the idea is, we create a strong foundation, and then we create tools that enables creators to share their work and find a way of remunerating them, whether it's by donation, whether it's by premium credit thing, or whether it's just being able to share their own scraping recipes or templates. So we haven't yet decided how it's going to work out, but the idea is definitely that there will be either a marketplace or community element, so that we can tap into all these all our super smart users who are just they're yearning to be able to share what they're doing and provide them with more tools.
Makes sense, makes sense. Before we go into the next part, I just let me highlight some of the comments and questions we received. So thank you, Larry, for joining. We do have thank you so much, Miguel. And I think this question, I think it's past, right? Can't get right now.
Yeah, I mean, Hexawatch and Hexometer, we typically use LTD deals to launch products. It enables us to get early feedback. It enables us to get better sort of product market fit at the very beginning. And it provides fuel for development. But then we have to have a sustainable business model afterwards. So unfortunately, we don't have an LTD for Hexawatch. Sorry.
This is another question. I think you already touched upon it, but just to some insight, like I did get this particular question asked by a couple of users who are unable to join the live session, but they was asking like, it's good that we get all the different sort of automations, like getting emails, social media links, all the different data. But from a normal user, like I'm not a pro, I'm not an agency where I don't have any clue on what is the best way to do a marketing where I don't look like a spammy or like I want to do something organic, but feels genuine when I do some sort of outreach marketing or something. I saw this question, like they are asking, like, is it any good use cases, tutorials, or best way of using Hexamatic for something like a organic best non-spam outreach, something like that? Is there any insights, or you already working on some tutorials on it?
So I think the best, the first point I would recommend would be just to check out the workflow library, because that can give a lot of some ideas as to starting points on using Hexamatic, and they're ready-made, so it's pretty easy to get started with that. If we can maybe, could you log into the dashboard, and we can just talk about some of these. Cool. So, from a marketing standpoint, so if you're going to be doing some sort of outreach, you can use Hexamatic firstly find prospects. You're using Google to look for websites which are ranking for certain keywords. Then you can use our email scraper, to find email addresses. You can validate emails using the email validation automation. You can run different types of audits. So you said, how do I not appear spammy when I'm doing cold outreach? I think the key is to provide value from the very first contact. It's getting data initially before you contact the prospect. So you can use Hexamatic to do, like, for example, tech stack analysis, to do broken links analysis, to look at SEO meta tags, the title, the description. You can do a spell check or grammar check. And then, once you've run these reports, you can look through them and say, okay, so this particular website has, these spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes, or they're using this, they're not using live chat, or they haven't set up their Facebook tag properly. Their pixel is not appearing, or Google Analytics is still using the old version of Google Analytics, or you have, there's tons of little things you can detect, or you look at SEO meta tags as an example. You might find that, their title is horrible. No one is going to click on it. So you can find all these different things and then use it to create a personalized message that will cut through the spam filters. Another cool thing you can do is you can use this data and write like a personalized icebreaker. And then you can use Hexamatic to create a voiceover of this message. And you can put this in a CSV file, upload the CSV file into Hexamatic, use one of our AI voices, and simply you attach this into the email. And you have something which is different. You imagine you open an email and you have a voice message. Like I never receive voice messages in my emails, so you'd be like, oh, who's this? And especially if that voice message is relevant to that person's company, and you're giving them a value box in that 30-second message, they'll be much more likely to get back to you. One thing that we're looking to develop further in Hexamatic is creating auditing automations. So right now we have spelling and grammar audits. This enables you to find spelling mistakes and also to have a screenshot of the page, and it highlights the mistakes on the screenshot, which is pretty awesome. So you can use this as an attachment in the email that you send. But we're also looking to expand this. So we're looking to create one for SEO on-page issues. We're also looking to create one for accessibility. So right now there are new rulings in terms of having to make your website accessible to users which have different disabilities. And so there are heavy fines as well associated if you don't comply with certain requirements. So the idea is we're going to have an accessibility automation that will essentially audit a page, and you'll be able to include this as part inside your workflow. We're also looking at creating an SEO one as well, and also we're looking at, okay, how can we make it end-to-end? So you look for prospects, and what kind of audits, what kind of checks can you make that you can then use as an icebreaker when you're getting in touch? Same thing with product teams. If you're in a SEO team or you're in a marketing team, what kind of repetitive tasks are you doing? We're going to be creating an audit which checks, for example, title and description meta tags for length, and for that they're not over the maximum suggested length. That you have, for example, open graph and all the social graph tags, and a whole wide of other things that you can then use to create reports for your clients, that you can use to create reports for prospects. So the idea is to combine that into essentially an end-to-end workflow.
And also, what you mentioned is true, like personalized images or just classification that reduce that just a generic outreach. Where when you have, especially if you can get that screenshot of that particular website, it will, for example, just a use case like when we are doing broken backlink for SEO, like just mentioning the link itself creates some personalization. But when we take that a step further and show that actual screenshot with the highlighted of the broken link, then it shows that it's not just a generic message but actually a person or someone who's invested on taking a screenshot highlighting the specific place and everything. Just that makes the spam a bit low compared to and make it more genuine, I think.
Absolutely, and it uses the power of reciprocity because if you receive something like some sort of gift or some sort of someone has made an effort to do something, you're much more likely to at least open it and because you'll be like, oh, I'm curious, what did they find? You see that there's like an image attachment, it loads up, you're like, oh yeah, actually this guy actually is not just a spammer, he didn't just contact 10,000 people in a few seconds. He actually took the time to do something, on our behalf. And I think this makes sense in so many different perspectives, whether it's for a client or whether it's for a prospect. So yeah, the idea is, how can we do these time-consuming things at scale? Because this is the problem. It's fine talking about it, but actually doing it, it takes ages. And you're doing things one by one, especially if you have to research the data on different websites. You have to load up the page. You have to do the various checks, use different apps. It's going to be cost prohibitive, and you won't even be able to do it. So if you're selling a medium to low value product, it doesn't make sense to do it because you're going to be spending so much time doing your research for the outreach that even if you get a good response rate, you'll be at a loss. But if you're able to find ways of doing this at scale, I think it makes a lot more sense.
Makes sense. The next question is like from Justin. We got like if we're trying to populate a local directory, like example, all restaurant in St. Louis with the name, phone number, address, hours of operation, rating, images, etc. What steps or recipe would we should use?
To be honest, the simplest way is just to use the Google Maps automation. You put restaurants in St. Louis, and you will get thousands of results with their phone numbers, opening times, reviews, ratings, the address, this kind of stuff. I mean, it takes 2 seconds, literally. You create a new workflow from automation, choose Google Maps as your automation, put in the niche, like for example, you want sushi restaurants in St. Louis, or you want just wider search like restaurants in St. Louis, and that's it. You can sync it to a Google Sheet or export it to CSV, and you're done. And using a premium credits, it costs you like 2 cents or something for it, and you have hundreds of business listings you can populate into your platform.
Makes sense. And they do have a pre-built Google Maps, so you don't need to manually scrape this stuff. For example, one of the flow I opened up, it has a Google Map. Basically, you only need this particular step just to type your keyword query. In this case, the name like restaurant St. Louis and give the coordination and the results. I think that will be good to go.
Yeah, and you can add additional automations inside these flows. So, for example, this one gets your Google Maps listings. You can scrape for email addresses, validate these, find phone numbers, even if they're not listed on the Google Maps listing page. You can also do tech stack analysis. You can find like meta tags at the same time. You can run an audit. So yeah, I mean, in this case, if all you want to do is just populate a local directory, just do that. Just follow this simple recipe, But you could also extend it to actually, you could, for example, use a whois check to see, when they first created their website. If you were doing some sort of prospecting, you can look at expiry date of the domain. You can look at what technologies they're using. It's
Makes sense. Makes sense. The next question, I think we already covered this question from Larry, but just a follow-up question, I think we already covered like LTD, it's the base, the built-in automation, and it's going to be same plan for both LTD and as well as monthly customer, where it's going to be a top-up kind of service where it's like 50 credits or whatever the credits you buy, it's for that particular month, and each of this credit consumption or the price for that automation is different for each of the task, and it differs based on the difficulty or the third party data, it seems. So when you go into the website and automation, if you go into the premium tab, now you will see all the third party or the premium extension which will require third party extension cost. If you go into any of this, then you will see what kind of cost it will typically have. So with this, if you are planning to use some specific one, you can get an idea. For example, if I open up a SEO backlink explorer, it shows like, for example, it shows 2.5 premium credits per query to get 1,000 results. So depending on different tasks, you will see what kind of consumption it will take. Depending on that, you can buy the automation price add-on as well. Is it right?
Yeah, essentially, Hexamatic is the platform. So you're getting a cloud-based scraping platform that also enables you to create complex workflows using built-in automations. So we have 40 built-in automations. This is what we provide in our plans, and premium automations is like the cherry on top. It's the optional extra. It's about capturing data from the cloud, from different providers, and being able to use this data within a workflow programmatically, without having to mess with different spreadsheets and bringing data from different parts. Again, the premium credit subscription. I know that in the LTD groups, we tend to be quite price sensitive, and as soon as you talk about a subscription, it's like red alert. But our goal with this is really as a cost saving process. We want to be like Amazon Prime is to Amazon subscribers. You can use Amazon and buy things, but Prime just provides you discounted access to different things. We want to provide the same thing. We think that anyone should be able to access things like residential proxies, which are prohibitively expensive. Anyone should be able to access the best of Google Cloud and AI without having to mess with APIs or programming. So the idea is to really vertically integrate it and to provide a cost-effective subscription. I mean, here, from $4.99 a month, you get to use all our premium automations simply on a per-use basis, and you get to tap into like premium proxy services as well. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is that Hexamatic by default uses data center IP rotation for free. So every time you're scraping, it uses a different IP address to perform the request. So it minimizes the chances of you being blocked. So this is included for free. When people talk about proxies, they typically talk about getting a data center proxy. These tend to be sort of on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of price. But what you really need, if you're getting blocked, what you really need is a residential proxy, and these are more expensive. They're more like in the $60 to $300 a month range. So this is what we want to bring in and to democratize in terms of access. But otherwise, you wouldn't need a data center proxy with Hexamatic because it's already built in, if that makes sense.
So I add a separate discussion topic on this point because this is one of the main point, right? So proxies, Like as you mentioned just now, that data center proxy is the pre-built in where the user is going to use. So not all the request is going from one single IP for all the different users, but you are using a range of it. But what is the possibility like even data center proxies can be blocked, right? I'm just talking from a non-techie perspective, but just can't be blocked if they detect that it's a range of IP which get their all the requests and everything. It still can be blocked, especially when we are using custom automatizations created for some specific website where they try to block the automation as much as possible. So what is there any precautions or just to make sure that we don't get blocked by just using the data center proxies?
Sure. So the way I would answer this is that if you had a software-based scraping platform, scraping software, right, on your computer, this would use your IP address, or you'd have to pay for a proxy. In our case, every time you make a page request, it's typically with a different IP, and we have a lot of IPs in the system. There's very little chance of a third-party platform detecting that it's the same person doing the request. But what might happen is that data center proxies, essentially what it means is that they are getting their IP addresses from a subnet which belongs to a hosting provider, right? So this hosting provider might be AWS, it might be Google, it might be the different sort of hosting platforms out there, DigitalOcean, etc. So the way it can be detected is more in terms of the origin of the IP, but not the platform that's making the request, if that makes sense. So typically, websites which use advanced countermeasures, they can see that, okay, this IP belongs to AWS, or this IP belongs to DigitalOcean, even if you've used like 1 million different IP addresses. Where residential proxies come in is that they use residential broadband providers as the source of the connection. So instead of it being, for example, OVH, this is going to be, for example, Cricket or AT&T or T-Mobile or like a mobile provider, right? So this is how they can detect whether it's data center or not. In terms of precautions, there's nothing a user needs to do really in Hexamatic because we stagger the requests, and also they are spread like through a very wide, varied range of IP addresses. So it doesn't look like, okay, this request came from this IP, but then only the last part changes. The IP addresses are pretty different. But they will, but using our data center proxy, they will all come from the same data provider, if that makes sense. So again, it's you'll be able to use the data center IP rotation for most websites, but for the 20% or 15% that have countermeasures, then yeah, you'll need to go for a residential proxy. That's for sure. But that's going to be the case for anything.
Yeah, makes sense. But just to get an example, clarification on that, when a request is going from Hexomatic to any website, there is not going to be any part of that request which identify that this particular request is coming from a scraper solution like Hexomatic, is it?
They won't know it's Hexamatic. It will come like it's someone coming, from it's a request, but it's not labeled as coming from Hexamatic. The browser signature will be potentially maybe different to a typical browser, but we try to do our best to try and replicate it as close as possible. And this is why we offer actually 2 different types of browsers. So in Hexamatic, you have access to the fast browser and you have a full stack browser. Some websites work better with the fast one. They won't block it. Or some others will prefer the full stack one. And you'll get better results with that.
Makes sense. So, as from the standpoint of view, like data center proxies will be most enough for most of the solution, but in case if there are some issues with the collection of data, especially when we are doing Google or something, then the residential proxies comes into play, right?
Yeah. So for Google, if you're just doing a few searches, the data center one will be fine. But if usually like the residential proxies are more needed for websites which they might use like a more strict version of like Cloudflare or some of the like Encapsula or these sort of high-end firewall solutions which will do sort of fingerprinting on the request, and they have more advanced ways of detecting repeated access that doesn't look quite human.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Let me go through a couple of other questions we got so far before
Sure.
moving forward. Can it monitor property listing?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the website. The best way is to just try it out. Try both browsers. If something gets blocked, use the residential proxy option to see what you get. It's difficult to tell on a side-by-side basis. It has to be tested. That makes sense.
And also, for example, can we do something like, I know Hexomatic takes in URL as a list of URL as an example, right? Can we make a live website or live data source into as an input? Like whenever something new gets added into this, do this automation. Is there some possibilities of that?
Not yet. You can use a Google Sheet as a source, and you can run something on schedule. So it will use the data from the Google Sheets that is dynamic. It run it. But we have some more work to do in terms of doing things in terms of understanding whether something has changed and whether something has updated. Right now, when you run like a workflow, which contains different automations, it runs it from start to finish. The next sort of steps for us to improve will be, okay, did that data change since the last time? So we're going to have some sort of integration with like Hexawatch to figure out, okay, has something changed since the last time you ran, the task? So this will help in this instance. And also another thing we're going to be developing is the API and webhooks. So right now we have a basic API and we have webhooks, outbound webhooks. So you can send data to any platform that supports webhooks when your workflow finishes. But there's lots of opportunities in terms of having inbound webhooks, which can act as a trigger to start like an automation, a workflow, or to be able to tap into third-party services via webhooks. So this will open up a whole new dimension in that you'll be able to potentially use any type of third party that has the ability to send data via webhooks. But again, it's in the pipeline, and we just need to figure out how to do it so that we keep this sort of vertical integration and minimize the complexity that is required. Because the biggest issue that we see is that even for like a Zapier or Pagination Connect or some of these other integration platforms, the difficulty is not to have the widest range of compatible applications, but it's actually making it easy for the user to use them. Because if you require a ton of different configs and different steps to make it work, and making it work both on their end and your end, it gets a little bit tricky. Like we know, for example, like Hexawatch, we have integrations with Zapier, with Pabbly, Integrately, and SyncSpider. And the it's good to have this integration, but do people actually use it much? And uh, are they actually able to do it without the help of our support team? That's another question. So we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we help people tap into integration platforms or other providers, but how can we make it easy without the config? Because the config is what really breaks the experience, I think.
True, makes sense. So as currently as the platform stands right now, it supports outbound webhooks. Like you can send data from the automation or workflow, but you are currently experimenting or trying out the best possible way for inbound webhooks as well, right?
Yeah, so you can send the results of your workflow using a webhook to any URL which supports it. Now the team is sort of looking at, okay, how can we use webhooks more like within a workflow, like to bring data in and to potentially we still have to figure out how to do it, but essentially to use a third party and then bring the data back into the workflow. You fetch something, you bring it inside, and you continue the workflow with that data, which is actually more complex than it sounds.
Yeah, yeah,
But
makes
I
sense.
think that if we were able to do something like that, it would be like pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's no longer just a input, but it's like input and taking the output and another input it's coming, right? It's just
Yeah. So like as an example, imagine you have a Clearbit subscription. And so as part of your workflow that finds prospects, you could potentially do data enrichment using their API, get that data, populate it into your workflow, and keep.
makes sense and continue the workflow.
Yeah. So ideally, the end game would be something like that. But it's a question of how to do it, basically.
And the next question is like, it's a follow-up question to the first one for the monitoring. Can it monitor the price policy on marketplace such as Shopee for brand owner to control the reseller online for price policy? I think like monitoring a particular price for the product changes.
Potentially, I haven't. I don't have experience with Shopee. I recommend like creating an account and trying it out. We have a 30-day refund policy, so if it doesn't work and it doesn't fit your needs, then feel free to do a refund. But yeah, I think Hexawatch would probably be a better fit because you could use the HTML element monitor to monitor the price and then get an alert if the price goes up or down. But in Hexamatic, you can do something similar, but it's kind of you don't get the alerting. So you can scrape the price on different listings. So the listings, I assume, have the same templates. What you could do is you could put in a list of all your product pages as a data input, create a scraping recipe for the listing page, capture the price, and then sync it to a Google Sheet. And then maybe what you can do is have some sort of manually check that Google Sheet for changes of price. So you can comparing it to the retail price that you might have.
And I think we can schedule that automation, right? So it checks
Yeah,
like every six. That way we know change, even though it's not instant, but I think it's going to be an interval level. And as you mentioned, Aja, I was just thinking that also like Exo Watch will be the more suited fit for that specific use case, like since it has notification on the price alert and everything. But I think what you mentioned is correct. Like we can create a schedule and try to see the differences by syncing to the Google Sheet.
yeah, and you can schedule it on a daily basis, and you every day see if there's a variation in price. Sure.
Thank you, Graham, for joining. And Graham, as another question, like it's an interesting one. I think it's another thing coming to the proxy side of it because we know that something like Yellow Pages is very strict with automation or anything data related scraping. Is it possible to scrape phone numbers using Exomatic?
I don't know. You'll have to test it, Graham. I assume test it out, and if you run into any issues, just get in touch with our support team. It's difficult to tell on a site-by-site basis. As you can imagine, these things are quite dynamic. You know, what might work today might not work tomorrow. So it's difficult to sort of give a yes or no. But
and on that question, I just wanted to ask a follow-up question as well. Like, we know that there are several different scraping tools which is easily able to scrape result out of a normal HTML page or a basic layout page. But when there is a lot more technologies comes into play, like JavaScript or like animations, pop-up windows, all the different stuff. So how you are right now when it comes to these kind of technologies and scraping data with Hexomatic?
sure. So this is like it took us a while to perfect the scraping browsers. It's actually there are two big issues when you're scraping. The first is emulating like a human browsing, so that you don't get blocked, and you get actually the page that you want, but you're not getting a fake page. Sometimes as a countermeasure, you know, websites will provide a different page than the one you actually fetching, just to dissuade people who are scraping. The second thing is being able to scrape a page and getting it to render like as if you have it on your browser, because the browsers we are using are slightly different to, you know, Chrome, Firefox, etc. So we're using sort of a headless browser, and also another type of browser that is a kind of more programmatic browser. So we had to create two different browser types essentially to cover our bases. And also to be able to scrape websites which use more like JS and which are more resource heavy. But this is something that we're always improving. So when we launched our beta, we only had one type of browser, and then we developed a second type of browser to deal with certain compatibility issues that we noticed. And you know, it's still a work in progress. It's difficult to get perfection and 100% when scraping, because you're always dealing with advances in browser technology and also in the different stacks that people use, as well as potential errors which are usually ignored by your web browser, but that can trip up like browsers which work on the server level. So this also happens, but we do our best. And if you do find that, you know, something doesn't render as it should, then get in touch with our team so we can add it to our compatibility list and figure out, you know, how it can be improved.
That makes sense. Thank you. The next question, I think Justin is just following up on his last comment on Google Maps, like how easy it was to just get the data out of Google. The next one is from Ashwin, like we will have a replay on this from YouTube to Facebook. Unfortunately, there is no further discounts, and already it's almost ending the campaign. I just got in the last minute. So sorry about that. And the next question is like, can we get API service for server plan?
So I think API is only on the Gold plan. I think it's one of the only one of the differentiators between the Silver and the Gold plan. I recommend if you want to future-proof, the Gold plan is going to be like our top plan, so you'll be getting everything in there. But you know, if you have less needs, then you know the Silver one is absolutely fine. But if you do want API, then yeah, the Gold plan has that.
So while we are on pricing plan, like what do we get with the API? Just some flow.
So the API would be like being able to, right now, our API enables you to start a workflow, pause it, get the data from the workflow. In the future, we'll be looking at, okay, how can you access other APIs potentially using Hexamatic. So it'll be this sort of automation that deals with APIs potentially. And also ways of bringing data into Hexamatic. So potentially using an API to take data from your platform or like a third-party platform into Hexamatic, and then you can run workflows and automations on that data. And
makes sense. So the differences between the silver and gold plan is right now the API is the biggest one, and apart from that, the simultaneous running workflow. Like with silver, we get only 10 parallel running of the processes where it's like unlimited, and the credit quota for different things. Other than that, all the things are same, right?
Yeah, so you can run as many concurrent workflows with the gold plan, and you get more automation credits. And also the gold plan is stackable. So if you need more than 10,000 credits, you can go up to, I think, 100,000, and then you can stack over that as well. So
okay,
simply, if you need more than 100K, you can simply purchase it twice. Stack up.
And also they do have a 30-day refund policy, just in case if you are not happy with the purchase.
Absolutely. I mean, I really recommend trying the paid plans, because our free plan doesn't provide access to a lot of the features. So I really recommend trying the full experience for yourselves, and to get a feel of what we're doing. And if it doesn't suit you, fine, just refund. There's really no problem there. But I think it's important to give it a try, because we're trying something a bit new here, and it's not a cheaper version of something that already exists. It's a new type of concept, and sometimes what we find is that pre-sale folks who don't know us, they ask us certain questions, and then when we talk to existing customers, they're like, yeah, once I used it, it clicked. Like I understood what it was about, but I had no idea what it was, just looking at the website. So maybe we're not doing our job in terms of explaining on the website, but I think it's one of those things you have to experience it. It's a bit like people who buy electric cars. Like when you do a test drive for a Tesla, the salesperson usually makes the sale after the 0 to 60 acceleration. It's instant. Like the person puts their foot on the accelerator, they experience the G's, and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm willing to mortgage my house to get this expensive car. But it happens like that. And I think with Hexamatic it's the same. Once you start using it, it just clicks, and you think, you start seeing ways that you can use it in your business.
Yeah, and a small suggestion on that, like we have all the different description of this automation, right? If we can get like a video of just showing the results or the input we need to provide and what kind of output we can get from this particular just a 1-minute video, I think that will make more understanding for the user. Like even if you have any use cases, you can link out this. I think you have created a perfect structure to explain it. Like with a video or link of article, I think it will be much more easier for a new user to understand.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea. We're looking to add more actually in terms of sort of micro documentation for each automation. And yeah, the video sounds good. By the way, I highly recommend, if anyone has doubts as to how Hexamatic works, the Academy has loads of video tutorials where I walk through like some of the different use cases. It's usually quite helpful, and also just to try it out, like if you're a completely brand new user to Hexamatic, use one of the ready-made workflows and just use that as a starting point. You'll have it pretty much all set up. You just have to put in an input, and you'll get something. It'll just work out of the box.
Makes sense. The next comment is like, thank you, Karan. He has already bought the deal and he's already a customer. Venki, thank you for joining. Unfortunately, no giveaway this time. I'll try to work up something and give it to you guys soon. Uh, I think we covered this product, this question. Sorry, Graham, I missed it on the earlier time. Let me go one more. Sorry about that. I'm a little bit late. How the Amazon product search works?
Sure. So we have two premium automations for this. The first one is product search. So you put in a keyword and you say, for example, I want to scrape Amazon US, and it will return all the products. You can choose in tranches of 100, I think. So you can say, for example, the top 500 products for that keyword for that particular marketplace. You'll get the price, you'll get the product thumbnail, description, and rank of each product. And we also have another automation called the Amazon seller automation. And this is, if you're an Amazon seller, this is really awesome. What you can do is you can put in as an input the URLs of your product pages on Amazon, and it will capture all the competing sellers that are either selling your product on your listing or hijacking your product listing. So if, for example, you're selling an original product that only you sell, you can use it to detect like hijackers that are basically trying to sell your product, even though they don't have permission or it's not their product. And you can also use it to archive their prices as well. So this gives you like the competing seller's name, their rating, the price, and the availability. This is really useful for sellers. Like the amount of hijackers on the Amazon network is just insane. They will sell like a counterfeit product or something which resembles your product, but it's not your product. And you'll get bad reviews because it's on your listing. People will complain, oh, this product is not very good, or this isn't what I ordered. And the crazy thing is that it's completely legal in Amazon. I mean, they let it happen. So the only way to police it is to get in touch with Amazon with proof. So you can basically say, this person was hijacking my listing.
Okay, so I didn't understand that because I'm not experienced with Amazon selling part, so I didn't get that. But just from a new perspective, like, does this require us to give our Amazon account credential, or does it work without any credit?
No. So to break it down into simpler terms, when you sell on Amazon and you create a product on Amazon that you're selling, usually you create a product listing. And on this product listing, Amazon enables other sellers to say, oh yeah, I'm selling the same product.
Okay,
so in the case of something which is like a product which can be sold by other people, for example, a Sony LCD TV or whatever, you may have like 10 people selling the same product, right? Different shops. So this is absolutely fine in the Amazon marketplace. But sometimes you're selling an original product that only you sell. So you might be the official distributor or the sole distributor of that product. But you still get cases where people are hijacking the listing and basically saying, oh yeah, I'm selling the same product, but they're not. So for example, you're selling Joe's blue widgets, and they're saying, oh yeah, I also sell Joe's blue widget. You're like, well, no, this is my product, right? So the problem is when you have a successful Amazon store, you don't have time to check all your listings manually, and there's no alerting. Like Amazon will not tell you if someone starts selling your product. Okay. So the only way to do it, to figure out, if someone is hijacking your products, is to check your listings manually, or you have a report which shows, whether you have the top price, the best price for that particular SKU.
Now this makes sense. Now this model makes sense, because before I didn't get what does that mean, Amazon seller finder. But when you explain the use case, now I'd say the importance, especially for someone like Amazon seller, it must be important.
there are some sellers which, they notice their sales drop overnight, and they're like, I don't know what happened. I was making, $2,000 a day on this product, and now I'm doing 50, and it turns out someone is basically selling like a counterfeit version of what they were selling at a $10 discount,
Makes
and
sense.
you wouldn't notice it unless you looked into your stats. So this type of automation helps sellers keep an eye on who else is selling a specific ASIN or Amazon product.
Makes sense. The next question, unfortunately, there is no discount, guys. Really sorry about it. Thank you for joining, though. No worries, Larry. I am also dumb in some cases, so I'm happy to ask the doubt myself also. Like, I know some of the workflows, instructions, and everything, but sometimes I feel like I need to understand it bit further. Like that's why even this Amazon, for example, I have no idea. Like even some of the people might have no idea, but this might be very suited for the use cases. So there's no dumb question. Everything works sense. Uh, Another question from Sumit, like, are we able to scrape data from load more pages? I think he's referring to the paginations. For instance, we want to scrape 100 posts, but the block index page is displaying only 10 posts.
Sure. So different ways. There are different ways to deal with this. The first is that we have custom actions on our full stack browser. So you can have a click action, which then loads more things on the page. And the other one is there are other ways of getting the full listing of a website. So for example, you could use the XML extractor. So if it's a blog, you can extract all the blog posts using the sitemap of that website. And then you can scrape these. Or you can use our our crawler automation to crawl the entire website, and then you can use the URLs to then do further scrapes. So don't worry if something requires you to see more, like to see all the listings. There are also other ways of getting all the pages from the website, if that makes sense.
And also the custom automation scraper also do have pagination support, like including numbers and also the load more, right?
Yeah, so we have two ways to paginate. We have an automatic mode which tries to detect all the different pages. And there's also a manual one where you can specify the URL and the variable that is used in the URL, and you can specify how many pages deep you want to paginate. So we cater for like cases where it's detected automatically, but also you can manually put it as well.
Yeah, in case if anyone is interested, if you check my video on Hexamatic, I have showed the example of both of the process, like with the automatic easy one as well as the custom one. In case if you guys want to get an idea on it, it's really easy. The next,
So in terms of scraping, if I may, we have two ways of really scraping. There's sort of the point and click system where you can you load the page and you simply click on elements you want to scrape from that page. We try to make it as easy as possible. And there's also a way to use like advanced features like CSS selectors and regex, and you can essentially like use your Chrome browser to get the CSS selector and then bring it into Hexamatic to capture a specific piece of data, and then you can refine the selection. So the biggest problem we found with existing scraping solutions is that they're way too complex. You're looking at a dashboard of Boeing 747. There's loads of buttons, things that you need to press, and it usually doesn't work first time. So when we sat down with our developers and we were like, okay, we need to create a new way of scraping that is really as simple as possible. We're talking to business folks. We're not talking necessarily to developers. We're not talking to front-end devs, which can create regex recipes, off the back of their heads. So we tried to make the base product as point and click as possible with things like automatic matching. So you can select one thing and it selects all the elements which match the same pattern. We auto detect whether you want text or numbers or URLs or whatever. But there's also for power users, we also have advanced options. So we try to cater for both types of users.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you. The next one is thank you, Venki, for joining. Like he just joined to came for support, but he's glued to the session. Like he really likes when it comes to potential software with a lot of use cases. He really liked this kind of application. I think we got him interested on Hexomatic. Thank you, Venki, for joining. I answered this question. Sorry about it, guys. There is no any extra discount, unfortunately, since they are closing to their lifetime deal campaign as right now. Uh, from Justin, the next question is like, how are the premium credit and lifetime credits related? Two separate things, or when using paid premium credits, those are detected or affect included the automation credits?
So they're two different buckets, so to speak. So you have your automation credits, which are used when you're doing scraping, when you run automations. So the way to look at automation credits is that every time Hexamatic does something, it uses one of these credits. And inside your plans, you have they renew on a monthly basis. So silver gets 4,500 a month, and gold gets 10,000 and upwards. Premium credits, it's essentially to use automations which use like third-party services or managed automations. I would recommend if you go to our pricing page and you click on the little area which talks about premium credits, it gives you more information as to what premium credits are and what they're used for. But the idea is that the platform itself, all you have to concern yourself about is just how many normal credits you need, and you can subscribe at any time to premium credits when you need to. So if, for example, you have a project where you need to get, for example, Amazon data or Google data or translations, or you need to access a residential proxy, fine, just subscribe for a month or two or whatever your needs are for premium credits, do your project, and then you can cancel that subscription. You can pause it at any time. It's a bit like Sam's Club or like Amazon Prime. You get discounted access to loads of different cloud services that work out of the box inside your workflow. It's the cherry on the cake, so to speak. So Hexamatic on its own does loads of stuff. You have 40 built-in automations. This is just a little extra where you can bring in data from different sources.
Makes sense. Thank you. The next question, like, is it work with Shopify, eBay, and AliExpress?
eBay and AliExpress, I think so. Shopify should do. But again, it's difficult to tell on a side-by-side basis. The best way is to try it out. And if you encounter any issues, just get in touch with our live support, and they'll be able to add it to a compatibility list or suggest ways to like workarounds to get the access. But usually, I mean, we built two different types of browsers, and we have IP rotation plus residential proxies. So with all of these, you tend to have pretty good coverage. But again, there are some sites which they may implement some sort of countermeasure, so it can be quite dynamic. So I recommend trying it out. We have a 30-day refund policy. And you get to access everything. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Just simply refund. We're here to create a community of folks which are using Hexamatic to grow their business. So if it doesn't suit your needs, then that's absolutely fine. But our goal is to try and onboard as many folks as possible so we can really grow the movement and find new ways of saving time and resources so that you can do more with less.
The next final question before we finish it off, like from Kaiser, like, should we purchase add-on beyond the lifetime deal? Like, the thing is, like, let me explain that so it's more easy. Like, basically, you will get two different kind of credit. Where the automation credit is the credit which you get as part of LTD plan, which renews monthly depending on the plan you buy. With the automation credits, you can use all the built-in automations which they have provided. If you go into automation and go into the built-in section of it, all of this comes under that automation credit. Let's say, for example, if you want any of the premium credit, which essentially means that it's bringing some kind of third party data or having some complex process, or they are requiring more proxy credits or something like that, then those automation comes into something called premium automation, which is a separate tab. So if you go into premium automation, you see these all the different automation which is available right now. It's not part of the automatic, which means these are not part of the LTD deal which is currently going around. So if you go into the premium credit, these are going to be the add-on ones. And if you go into the pricing page and scroll down, there is a section called premium credit add-on. And if you click on the learn more button here, it shows all the different sections where they are using what kind of cost associated with different types of services or different third party resources, to give you more ideas on that. For it, so just to simplify it, with the LTD, you will get all the built-in automation automatically, which will renew monthly without any additional third-party cost. But if you require this premium automations to use, because of the nature of the services or the data they need to collect, there is a separate cost, and you can top up the credit as you want. Is it correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't focus too much on the premium credit side, because you can subscribe at any time. And it's just like $4.99. I mean, when you're using automations which use premium credits, we're talking about like a few cents at a time. So for example, to get Google data, it's like 2 cents or 3 cents per fetch. It's the premium credits go a long way. Another thing to consider, and this is answering Larry, who says if we can get premium credits monthly, we can't provide that in the LTD because these are additional costs which are on top of our operating costs and maintenance costs. But what we do, and guys, you need to keep this secret, is whenever if you purchase an LTD plan, we usually provide some free premium credits so that you can try things out. So if you get a silver or gold, we usually provide a little bonus and enabling you to try them out, so you get the full experience. At the end of the day, premium credits is our way of making sure that you guys get access to everything in Hexamatic. It's not limited to a higher tier plan that is not on LTD or that you have to pay huge monthly fees for. Our idea is, okay, how can we bring typically expensive services like residential proxies or things that require subscription, like Moz, Majestic SEO, things like DeepL, which all have like $30, $50, $100 a month subscriptions. How can we enable you to tap into this type of data on a per use basis with a very small minimum commitment, like $4.99, and you get access to all this stuff on a per use basis?
Yeah, that makes sense. And thank you. And Kaisha, no worries. Thanks, you got it. Like, I ending the final section of the video. Like, in case if you guys any other questions, feel free to let me know in the chat. I will ask it. I just want to right now ask just a brief insights on, like, I see a lot of changes happening. For example, I was on the change log page. Basically, I see a lot of different uh, automation stuff is coming. Like, for example, the regex is something new, RSS extractor, all these things are coming. And also I see the roadmap also for this product. We already covered the marketplace which is coming soon, possibly once you figure it out, and the input webhooks or the data collection part of it. Can you let me know any other insights on what are the possible short term or the long term plans with Hexomatic, apart from the things we discussed so far?
Sure. So our vision for Hexamatic is to really provide this end-to-end work automation platform. So a lot of the work that we're doing right now is thinking, okay, how can we make the job of a salesperson doing prospecting online, or someone who's working in a marketing or SEO team or web development team, how can we help make the reduce the need to do all this manual labor, essentially? So a lot of the things that we're working on right now involve, like, how can we bring more auditing powers inside Hexamatic? So for example, right now we can do spelling, grammar checks, we can check for broken links, we can get SEO meta tags on pages, and you can basically use this inside your workflow on top of other data. So this is useful, for example, when you're doing a prospecting report and you want to say, okay, I noticed 4 spelling mistakes on your website. Here's a screenshot showing the different mistakes. Do you have a time for a quick chat tomorrow to discuss, potential copywriting ideas or things that could add value to your business? We want to develop this a little bit further. So I was talking to Alston before, and one of the things we talked about was, okay, what other types of auditing tools could we have inside Hexamatic to simplify this type of task? So one of the things that our team is currently working on, which I think is going to have a pretty big impact, is accessibility audits. So right now, different states and different countries are really tackling disability accessibility. It's going to become much more expensive in terms of fines if your website is not accessible to people who have specific disabilities. So what we plan to do is to have an audit which you can include inside workflow that will check for major issues and then summarize the findings. This will be great if you're doing any type of outreach for like web development services, or consulting, or even for clients. You can run this on a weekly or monthly basis on all pages of the client's website to find issues. Another thing we have in the pipeline is an SEO audit for on-page issues. So the idea again is that you could take, for example, the top 100 or top 10 results in Google, and then perform an SEO audit on the landing page from the search results, or even do like a full site-wide audit. And this would be included inside your workflow. Other things that we are working on, integrations, like for example with Zapier, with Adly, thinking about how we can bring data in and pull data out of Hexamatic to make it even more flexible. Essentially, we're focusing on not necessarily trying to fit as many features as possible, but trying to create end-to-end workflows that represent use cases. So, what does someone working in SEO need? What does someone working in sales doing cold outreach need to perform better, to scale their tasks, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, in a short period of time, I mean, we're now at, I think, over 60 automations in total. I think now is the time to focus on the auditing side to complete this, and I think it's going to be pretty unique in terms of a platform. I don't think there's anything out there already like Hexamatic that enables you to capture data from the web and perform tasks on that data. But we also want to open it up, and as we discussed earlier, we would like to have at some point a sort of marketplace where smart folks who are like technically minded are able to create scraping recipes and automations, and being able to either share them with the community or find a way of getting revenue from it. So potentially, with the premium credits to support the developer or support the maker, so to speak. Because there's only so much we can do as a company, but if we have thousands of creators which are able to create scraping recipes and automations for different things, I think the possibilities are pretty much limitless. I think this is where companies like Zapier are able to be such a big change agent, is that they're not the ones making all the automations. It's also the developers and third-party companies which are integrating with their system. And I think that right now we have to take baby steps, and we have to create the foundation, we have to create the automations, we have to create the tools that our creators can then use to build stuff, and then that will open things up even more, I think.
Makes sense because just to see the progress, I think I created the video like 2.5 months ago. I think 2 months or 2.5 months ago. If we go and watch my video on that, you can see how many low amount of automations during that time. I specifically mentioned that as a one of the con because it just add a it had the necessary automations, but still it was not enough like the market competitors or something like that. But when I see a lot more automations are coming into play, template library is something new, the different structure of browser for the custom automation. So you are building the core of the product. Now I think it's time, as you mentioned, like move on to the different stuff to make it something unique for Hexamatic as well.
Yeah, and also I think one of the things we're trying to do is how can we combine data from different places and create something that is super accessible, works on autopilot, and you can actually use. I think a lot of us in the LTD scene, we buy new products on a weekly basis whenever something new comes up. And a lot of this stuff stays on the shelf because it's either too complex or takes too long, or it doesn't. There's no actual practical use for the product. What we really want to do is to make sure that we are empowering people with something that they can use from day one. That's the core thing. It's simplifying the experience and making it integrated. And I think that we have an opportunity to really create a movement where we automate these time-consuming tasks, and we can then focus on more better things in our business. I think a lot of companies, especially with COVID, they've had to either restructure or they're working much harder now than before. And this is a way to kind of even things out. It's a way of how can you do more with less? How can you do apply growth hacking strategies to your business? And how can you sort of create new services? Some of the things that we do right now with Hexamatic, the type of outreach you can do now with this is something that would take someone using different tools a whole bunch more time to be able to do exactly the same sort of thing. So yeah, my takeaway and my vision for the next months is how can we create an Apple-like experience or a Tesla-like experience with a software product where it's easy to get started and it just works out of the box. There's no configs, there's no messing about. You have ready-made workflows, you just click it, you put in your input, and you get the output.
Makes sense. And I think that's all the questions. And thank you so much for joining. We didn't plan out it will go this long. I thought it would probably take 30 to 45 minutes, but we are close to 1 hour. So thank you so much. If you have anything final you want to say to the audience, and this video will be recorded, guys, no worries on that. And sorry for the short notice. I just asked Chris yesterday and he immediately agreed. So there was no planning or something like that. I just thought of it and requested, and he agreed it immediately. So thank you so much. And Chris, if you want to mention something final closing, just go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, thank you for organizing this. It's really appreciated. I mean, we've managed to grow because of you guys. So the LTD community and the groups are super important to our mission of bringing these tools to a wider audience and really trying to make a difference in this industry. So a big thank you, and a big thank you to our existing customers who support us. Because I mean, if we look at the way we've developed our products, it's all been feature requests and understanding what our customers want and their ideas and their suggestions and their pain points, and being able to have the support of our existing customers and be essentially beta testers, and they were like when we first launched Hexamatic. We couldn't have done it without our amazing existing customers, which were beta testers. It's difficult to create something from scratch, and to be able to have the support and to be able to polish things and to be able to make it better week by week, it's awesome. So a big thank you to you guys, to the community, and you guys rock. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Graham, yes, I'm not in a shirt today. It's a t-shirt day for me. It's something I wanted to keep it casual. Thank you so much, guys. Again, I will make a recording of this and it will be available with little bit of background noise removal, and I will post that. And thank you again, Chris, for doing it. I will leave the link for the deal also in the description. So if you want, you can check it out. The deal, you can also go directly with Hexomatic and try to get it as well. Once again, thank you so much, Chris, and I wish you best of luck with your venture and all the exact product, not just Hexomatic. Everything is
Awesome.
interesting.
Thank you very much.
Take care,
care.
guys.
Bye, guys.